I've lived with chronic illnesses for almost 50 years now. I'm 74, and I have had a career which eventually found myself in the space of working with executives who lived with different chronic illnesses because I could relate to that.
Welcome, magnificent coaches, to another episode of Going Beyond the Circumstances. And today I have with me Rosalind Joffe. Welcome, Rosalind.
Thank you for having me, Shiri.
It's such a pleasure. So before I introduce you to say a few words about yourself, for those who are not familiar with you and your work, just going to say that our friendship started after I built up the courage to approach you. I was following you for a while, reading your blog. I was completely in love, and I was a young coach at the time, and I was like, okay, I want to be her friend. So I gathered up all my chutzpah and I just sent you an email. And the rest is history. So, Rosalind, for those who don't know you, please say a few words about who you are, where you come from, what you do, what you're passionate about, anything.
I've lived with chronic illnesses for almost 50 years now. I'm 74, and I have had a career which I refer to as having had switchback turns until I was in my late 40s, when I had stopped working for a short period of time and then slowly went back into the workforce and eventually found myself in the space of working with executives who lived with different chronic illnesses because I could relate to that. And I realized it was a need. And so if that's what I've been doing for the past 26 odd years, not just executives, with anybody who lives with chronic illness or any kind of chronic health challenge that debilitates them. And what inspires me, I work less at this point in my life. I have two unbelievable grandchildren, very, very little and tiny, and they are the light of my life. But I wrote a book called Women Work in Illness, Chronic Illness, and I still find that my work is this thing that keeps me going in so
I can
many
relate to
ways.
that. So, so you wrote a book and you have a blog, and we'll mention that later. So, highly recommended, both of them. So, before we deep dive into circumstances and how do we go beyond and should we go beyond, let's start with self-care. So, 2 tips for self-care. How do you self-care?
Find that is a challenge that is always changing. And it's an illusion to think that there's one thing we do. A spa day would not help at this point. In fact, it's of no interest. That's used to? No. So now I find what is self-care is able to just take a moment, listen to the meditations that I love to listen to, and or be with my granddaughter, who is a source of light. So looking for the light, those are two things that really help.
I love that. I love that. And I also love the perspective that self-care is changing all the time. And it's not one thing.
Yes.
And let go of the whole
No.
day at the spa fantasy. That usually doesn't work. Okay.
Well, it all
So,
depends, though, Shiri.
I mean, if
Depends on
I
where you
find
are.
depends on where you are, especially where you are with your health journey. I find that
Yes,
a day at the spa really works for people that are generally feeling well already and just need a bit of an
that's
oomph
right.
to feel even better.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree.
So I find that one of the biggest challenges that coaches face when they're helping clients navigate circumstances that leave those clients overwhelmed or unresourceful, stuck, even lost, I find that coaches find this really, really challenging. And oftentimes the coaches get overwhelmed and stuck. So in your experience, what is one thing that most people get wrong when they themselves try to move beyond circumstances of some kind of a tough situation, or they try to support someone to move beyond those circumstances?
So interesting you asked this because I just had a client call yesterday and I noticed I was doing that. And the thing I think that we all get wrong, whether we're in it or we're a caregiver or a coach, we try to fix it. We go
Yeah,
to the plan. This is what's going to make this better. Focus on this, do this, and because it creates anxiety to just be in it. So let's fix it.
Yeah.
Let's find the solution.
Make it go away. Thank you for
Yeah, well,
that.
that will make it go away if we have, yeah, that will make it go away. That's the illusion.
That's the illusion of it. So here's another bit of illusion. Okay. And it has to do with emotions. I think that, we're holding an illusion about our ability to manage our emotions. And I think that that's not possible. But
Mm.
what we can manage is manage ourselves within emotional states. So it's not managing the anger, it's managing myself and bringing in choice so I can decide how do I want to express that anger, because the anger is here and I'm feeling it. So what are some things that you've learned over the years and you practice in terms of managing emotional states?
All of these questions are so interesting from a developmental point of view,
Mm-hmm.
where I am in life, and I'm finding I'm still working on some of the same issues I worked on when I was in my, especially for instance, in my marriage. And what I work on with clients, talk a lot about this. Emotions are different from thoughts. As a
Yep.
coach, we know this. And most people refer to them as the same. And especially they think of an emotion is a thought.
Yeah.
I think this, but in fact, I feel this. So the first key is to recognize it's a feeling, just a feeling. And I work on that myself too. The issue is that feelings can overwhelm thoughts, and that happens. And I think it's impossible to try to ignore that. It's foolish because you can try, and there are people who are so buttoned up that they don't feel, but then you don't feel anything. You just get so used to that.
Yeah.
So, how do you find the balance? And for me, what I have learned, and this is one thing I'm good at. I can say I'm sorry. And I think that that's an underrated quality, especially saying you're sorry when you really recognize that you are sorry for your behavior. I
Mm.
apologize for that behavior. I'll probably do it again, but I acknowledge it. Did
Yeah.
that answer your question?
I think it did. I think it did. And I think, when we're talking about apologizing, there's something about apologizing to ourselves and also forgiving ourselves. Because sometimes we
Very
get
much.
so caught in the emotions. And then when we finally regulate ourselves, we step back and we go like, oh my God, again? Have I learned
Right.
nothing? And that ability to just say, I'm sorry. Yeah, again, I've learned a lot.
Make it to
And still,
yourself,
yeah.
as you
And,
said,
and,
and just say it to yourself. Yes, compassion
and
in that
forgive
reference.
that compassion,
And
knowing that,
notice also, sorry,
yeah, no,
notice
continue.
that I went right to anger. So
Mm.
when we think about emotions we're trying to manage, how many people want to manage the feeling of loving, happiness, glee? We don't. That's a feeling anyone I've come in contact with, we want that. We don't want to, it's the emotions we think are negative.
That's
And that's
another
why,
illusion. The whole, distinction between positive emotions and negative, the
yes,
human emotions. I think the positive emotions, or what we call positive emotions, are feel good emotions, and the others are not. And by the way, we have more feelings or more emotions that do not feel so good, but they're all human emotions. So once we label an emotion negative emotion, we're kind of not giving ourselves permission to be human and feel that emotion. And I find that a lot. People with illnesses, once they feel sad or they feel angry, they feel so guilty and show shame. I'm negative. I'm this. I should be positive. You should be you. You should be human. And
well, and the other
yeah,
thing I would say to that, Sherry, is in the should part, you should be, but it's also better for you. It's better for you because, especially if you're dealing with any kind of a physical or emotional imbalance there, when you add that should, you're depleting yourself even more. You're pushing, and you don't have that much resource to begin with. You sort of tap down.
and speaking of resources, sometimes it's okay to give yourself permission to park that emotion and say, this is too much.
Yeah.
You know, we are recording this today and it's the 8th of October, and yesterday was October 7th. And I was very aware of the fact that I had a limited capacity to feel grief and sorrow. And I really needed to park some of it for a later time where I could process it.
Yeah.
And that's also compassion. That's also managing yourself within an emotional state, saying, it's a bit too much for me right now.
That's
Okay,
wisdom. Yes.
yeah. So, emotions are one component of a crisis. And I think
Yeah.
another component has to do with trust.
Oh,
Something happens to our ability to trust. And I think that in a crisis, what happens is, first of all, that something happens to our ability to trust ourselves, but also something happens to our ability to trust external resources, things that used to be anchors, whether it's people or places or the world. Maybe it's a paradigm.
mm,
So, how can we help clients rebuild confidence and clarity after a major crisis or life event?
that is such a challenging, tough issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
We see it, you see it in the public space all the time right now. You see it in private space. I know more people, friends, separating, getting divorced right now, which I find really interesting. I find really sad. And there's a feeling that people have of not even trusting themselves. I made that mistake believing in this. And then when your body lets you down,
Oh boy.
and that's the language. My body is letting me down. I can't trust my body. Well, in fact, that is what it's doing. It's not doing what you think it should do. And how do you regain that? I think this all goes back to this notion of resilience, which is something I started thinking about decades ago. I sure don't have an answer to it. I think that the when you think about how a child learns trust, and I've done a little work in this area, and children who are abused don't trust. Children who are often in foster care don't trust. There's a reason we need to experience it and get the feedback it's okay to trust. So when I'm working with a client where that's really lost, and let's say around illness, I think about it in a larger perspective and look at what can you trust? And well, first, what does trust mean to you? And how do you define it? And what do you want it to be in your life in this moment regarding that issue? And then what's getting in the way of it happening? What are the obstacles there? And really then finding the places where there is trust and building on that sensation in our bodies.
Yep. And sometimes you really need to go back to basics with that. Sometimes it's inhaling and exhaling, as
Yeah.
basic as that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I used to watch Dr. Phil's show. I don't have time for that anymore, but I adore him. And he said one thing about trust, and he said, it's not about trusting others, it's about being able to trust ourselves to
Yes.
survive if someone breaks our trust. And that's the key. And another thing that you said, I had a student, sometimes on the course, on the health and medical coaching course, I have students that are both coaches and doctors. That's always
Yes.
fascinating. Really, really interesting combination and juggle on so many levels. But we had this discussion about normal and abnormal and, different perspectives that, we can play with when we're looking at, loss of trust in the body or the body behaving in an abnormal way. And I remember
Right.
that she got, pretty angry and she said, why are we talking about an illness as something that's abnormal?
Right.
The body gets sick. It's part of life. It's not a question of, am I going to be sick? Will there be an illness? It's just a question of
Right.
when and how.
That's
And I
right.
said, and I just thought about it,
Wow.
that's a wonderful perspective because when I understand that one thing that my body does is become ill in different ways, it's not personal.
Yeah.
Stops being
Not
personal
personal.
because betrayal is very personal. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, what I hear from my clients is that loss of trust in the body, the subtext is, I have been betrayed. I trusted you
I've been
and you betrayed. We
betrayed.
had this, unspoken agreement
Mhm.
where I should trust you unconditionally and you deliver the goods. You did not deliver the goods.
You're letting me down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
my body
betrayed
is
my
letting
trust.
me down. You betray me. Very
That
much
is
so.
painful.
Very, yes. And takes away all of your agency, all of the sense of, I can do this because you're this victim. And in, you betrayed me, my body is betraying me, and you just want to go back and lie down. It's happening to me. Yeah.
And I think also in that sentence of my body let me down, what's implied is that my body is separate than me.
Yes.
There's a coach from the UK. His name is Mark Walsh. He's an embodiment coach, amazing guy. And I took a few trainings with him. And one thing that he says is the body is not the taxi for the brain. The body is part of who we are. So what
Mm,
does that mean when I say the body let me down? Did I let me down? Did I betray me? Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing that I say is, when you want to rebuild confidence and you want to rebuild trust, it's easy if you can have reassurances that trust is not going to be broken again. But oftentimes when you live in volatile circumstances, that's not possible. Whether it's a health
Mhm.
issue, whether it's a geopolitical issue, a climate issue, there are no guarantees. So I think it's about learning to find confidence and stability, when you're standing on a ground that's unstable.
Yes, very much. And as you said that, what I thought to myself is that's why I start with what does trust mean to you?
So important.
Because what you're saying is if you're looking for this ideal, it's very fragile. But if you can find the ways in which, even if you can't feel your feet and I can't feel mine, you can still know that they are grounded. And that's a hard thing, especially when you're a coach helping someone feel that while at the same time not shaming them if they can't. And that I find a very tricky place
I love
to
that.
go.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we're close to the end.
Okay.
Yeah, so you mentioned resilience. So what are some of your top resilience building techniques? Your go-to resilience building techniques that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I find that in a very funny way, distraction. In other words, if I'm in a place where I'm just perseverating, the tape keeps rolling and I'm going down, I want to break that tape. So whether it's, for me, resilience is talking with someone else rather than turtling. I talk and I process and I feel me again. So the key is I stop that tape that's just solo and I reach out. And that's really helpful because then I get feedback and I get back in. And I would say the second is music. For me, music, playing or listening to music.
What do you play?
Well, now I play fiddle, actually,
Woo!
but piano. And I find that just really takes me to another place. And I can do it even with my body not when it's not in great shape most of the time. And listening to it. I find most people really respond well to music.
Music is amazing.
Yeah. Simple. Simple, nothing complicated.
Yeah, but the simplest things are usually the
Yeah.
best.
Sort of like taking a
Keep it
Tylenol.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rosalind, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Shiri, I said, I am honored and I really, really appreciate it. Having this opportunity. Thank
The
you.
feeling is mutual. So, where can people find and learn more about you? And we'll have all this information in the
Okay.
text as well.
I have a website,
Mm-hmm.
cicoach.com. And that's where it all is. I used to have a big presence on, well, it's no longer Twitter, on X. What I'm not on X even. I don't have a social media presence anymore. I may be on LinkedIn, but that's really my website. Still really holds true.
It's a good website and it has a lot of information. So, highly recommended. And the link to your book is there as well.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Rosalind, thank you again.
Thank you, Shiri. It was an absolute pleasure. Lots of fun.
Yeah. So, thank you, amazing coaches, for joining us today. If you're a coach who wants to learn how to support your clients through life's hardest challenges, tune into our next episodes and check us out on social media for additional personal and professional content and trainings. Thank you so much. Bye bye.